welcome to another episode of REWILD Motherhood. For those of you who caught the initial episode, Megan and I had the privilege of chatting earlier today, except I totally botched it and somehow it was lost to the Instagramosphere, which seems to happen a lot more often than not with me, which I'm not super proud of.
I think it's Instagram, not you.
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better. My husband was like, people are going to start thinking you're a hack. And I'm like, well, good, because I am. So limited expectations, because I really am just like pulling this off by the skin of my teeth. But Megan is amazing. She's a fellow adventure mama with me. And she recently wrote a piece that super resonated with me about being plus size in the outdoors and everybody deserving to be outdoors. And it was a really powerful and moving piece. So I'd love it if you just wanted to jump in a little bit and tell me what inspired you to do that.
Sure. So first of all, thanks. Hi to everybody I haven't met. I'm Megan Puel, based out of the Pacific Northwest. So I first had an idea for my Adventure Mama project, which is a blog series and a few meetups, based off of kind of seeing a lack of diversity in body types in the outdoors. I mean, there's a lot of lack of diversity in general, but for me, as a plus size mom who loves the outdoors, it's really kind of like my haven. I wanted to talk about kind of feeling out of place in the one place that you really feel in place. So the first thank you. So the first post was really just kind of an introduction and talking a lot about the mental challenge that I think we all go through when we are out and about. And then, we have several subsequent pieces talking about kind of the industry, size wear availability, kind of the Nike drama that happened this summer with plus size outdoor people, which, spoiler alert, we do need leggings in a size 16. I wear them. Yeah. No. yeah. Well, here, newsflash. I
said it in the live, but I can't wrap my head around the fact that that's even a controversy. Like the fact that like someone is like, no, thank you, not them, like it is mind-boggling to me.
There's like a side, and it was really harsh. It was like I can tell you that models, that particular model is not getting ready to go on a run. She's actually probably pre-diabetic and about to go in for like a heart transplant or something ridiculous, and you're just okay.
You're like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah, and then it gets published, and then it got like a backup article published by the Telegraph, and I was like, the Telegraph, like, you're a legit publication, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's just been really fascinating. I think it's a really interesting time for plus size people in general. I think there's a really amazing movement happening of inclusivity and of understanding that health can come at all sorts of sizes, and then a lot of that though can come with a lot of like paradoxes, which we talked about earlier, which we can talk about again. Or
we're gonna have to like pretty much do the whole damn thing again, because I loved what you said, and do not jump off that. Hold on here, can I help you down? I was hiding on the top of my pop-up camper, just sitting on like it folded up, and my daughter climbed up, and she's like the most dramatic human ever. Jump off of it. So
okay, well, if we need to take a break, you can do that.
No, we're totally fine. This is like old hat for me, literally. Like, her theatrics are aggressive at best. So
does she want to sit in and ask questions?
Lena, do you have any questions? No. So
okay.
I'm gonna make you pretty much talk about it again, because
that's fine.
All of what we were talking about just resonated so deeply with me, and I think I wanted to start a little bit with what you were saying about people choosing to be hurtful. And we talked about this earlier with how when people choose to be hurtful, it's almost easier to kind of shrug them off like as assholes and idiots and be like, like, clearly you're choosing to be shitty, which means that I can choose to tune that out. But it's all those microaggressions is the term that I could think of, that when those add up are the things that kind of eat at you more. Like, and I mentioned this and I made a post about it. Like, I was running the other day, and the old man on the bike who was like, hey, if you keep running, like, eventually you're going to get into great shape. And I was like, well, ouch for one, and two, like, this is as good as it's gonna get, my friend. Like, I'm not getting in any better shape, and because I'm in the best shape of my life. Like, if by some freak chance I'm like able to run an ultra marathon, like, that's where my good shape will be. But other than that, this is it. And so those kind of microaggressions cut because they don't even, no, thank you, mean to be hurtful, but it's just like indicative of how backwards the dialogue is in our society about fit and body size.
Totally. And I think that, I mean, yeah, first of all, you just ran a Ragnar, so that's ridiculous. Second of all, you know, whatever, you did it. And I think, though, that is something that really resonated with me after I wrote the first piece. You know, I was pretty uncomfortable, to be honest, because I didn't really feel like I fit in the Adventure Mamas group at first, even though everybody's so loving and kind and great. I was like watching people, you know, watching like Andrea scale Mount Rainier, and I was like, what am I doing here? It's like I'm going up like 2,000 vertical feet and then like huffing. Like, who am I? But I think what really resonated with me was even like people within our Adventure Mamas community who are really supportive and really like here for women in all sizes, shapes, colors, forms. Were like, hey, you know, I had to actually check myself after your piece, because I realized I was kind of subconsciously judging people on the trail. And so like, you know, asking them, and it's those small things like you said, like, oh, hey, do you need help? Like, are you okay? And whereas I appreciate anybody being kind, you know, it's when you're asking me or you're saying like, hey, good job, girl, you're almost there. And you're saying that to me, but like not my skinny husband or like anybody else in the trail. It makes me feel like you're taking into my size, you know, to account. You're not treating me like another kind of hiker or whatever. Yeah. And I get that.
It's patronizing, you know?
It is. And I think it comes from a good place, but it doesn't make me, but it still sucks, right? It still feels really bad.
You know, it's like what, you know, like, it's a good intention, but like, what's that famous saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like, my mom used to say that to me all the time. And now, like, it's a little out of context, but it still like really resonates, because it's like, you know, Ragnar, for example. Okay, hold on one second. I gotta put her down. Ready?
That's fine.
Please don't fall on your head. Thank you.
Well done.
Right. We're back. But yeah, thank you. Everyone on the trail at the Ragnar that I passed, you know, or passed me, was like, you're almost there. You can do it. And I'm like, you know, like, I had no illusion that this was gonna be easy. Like, and I appreciate it. But when you're passing me and saying it, but not someone else, like, it hurts, because it implies to you that I somehow can't do it without your motivation.
Which is or that painful. That I'm surprising you, which, you know, and again, like, I think that there is something to be said for praising strangers and to encouraging others. I think that is a huge thing that we've lost in our kind of like very individual siloed tech societies. But at the same time, I think you're right. Their point is well taken, that it's like the equality of praise. Of like, if you're going to say like, yeah, girl, you're crushing, then say it to that skinny bitch up there too, you know? Like, don't just say it to me, although I appreciate it. But it comes off a little patronizing, and it makes you feel automatically assumed that you are less than or not. There's not enough faith in you that you're going to be able to do whatever it is that you are attempting to do. And so, you know, I had some people reach out to me and be like, hey, that, you know, I had to realize that when I was on the trail and all of a sudden I thought like, oh man, that person doesn't look prepared. Like, what was I thinking? Because what was telling me that they're not prepared?
That didn't look prepared?
Yeah, it wasn't their like the same, you know, Merrell hiking boots that I had. It wasn't, you know, they had their 10 essentials. They like, what was it? Oh, it was that fact they were chubby and they're huffing. Like, you know, and so I think that's really amazing for us to be able to not only have those conversations, but have people who aren't plus size come back and say, look, I really reevaluated and I've made some changes. And I think that's one of the best things about this community.
That's amazing.
But it's also something that's like really scary to put out there.
Yeah, it's really intimidating. And you know, one of the most intimidating things I think about talking about bodies or whatever is that everyone is sensitive. It's across the board, thin, middle, fat, whatever you want to call it. It's scary. And so when you breach this topic, people tend to get really defensive. Like a while ago, I went rock climbing and a family member of mine was like, "Oh, that's really great, but you know, you just don't have the body for it." And I was
They
like,
did not.
well, I have arms and legs, so
Right.
I feel like, and even then, like, I've seen people climb, so like I'm
Yeah.
very confused. And when I brought it up to them later, being like, "Hey, you know that hurt," they're like, "Well, you're just being sensitive." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think everyone is sensitive. Everyone has
Mm-hmm.
those feelings, but sometimes you have to evaluate what your role in making that person feel uncomfortable is, and
Yeah.
unseen, and invalidated, whatever it is. I'm an English major, I
Mm-hmm.
promise. in what they're doing, like
Yeah.
even in your seek, like someone's quest to validate you by being like, "You've got this, you're going up,"
Yeah.
it's actually shockingly invalidating.
Yes. Absolutely. It's, and it's one of those things I know we talked about earlier, that it's not just the outward struggle either, it's the internal struggle. Like we all, I would say a majority of women are having an internal dialogue at most points in the day, and
Yeah.
particularly, in a plus size, it's really easy to kind of assume or jump to the fact of like, are they saying that because I'm bigger? Are they like,
Yeah.
whatever, because it's always in my mind, I'm having the same struggle between like, I'm a total badass and like, Megan, you're disgusting. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
I feel
constant
that.
battle. So when those little kind of micro reassurances that you really are out of place, they really add up in a
Yeah.
significant way.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It's like you said, those micro things solidifying that maybe you can't or you shouldn't. Like,
Yeah.
it's, and I think I mentioned this earlier too. Like, I feel like I have to be so good at the things that I do outdoors
Mm-hmm.
so that I don't hear those things, so that I can
Yeah.
somehow disprove, or I guess rather prove that I belong there. Like,
Yeah.
if I am running this Ragnar, I better be going so fast. I need to be the
Yeah.
fastest, which is literally not gonna happen ever in a million years. But I somehow feel like less than, like, if I'm not really good at this thing, then I'm like, see, I proved them right. I don't
Totally.
belong here.
Totally. I feel that a lot. And um I think that it's a terrible paradox too, right? Because the same thing with like having the issues of people being appalled that people that are size 16 want to actually have spandex to work out in. You go out in the trail and you are thinking, man, can I do this? Can I actually do this? And then people are kind of questioning it, but the only way you get better and you get to those levels, the only way that I'm ever going to climb a 5'11" is if I climb a 5'8". But
Yeah.
when I'm a size 4 and I'm struggling on a 5'8", I didn't really ever feel like judged. But when I'm
Yeah.
struggling on a 5'8" and I'm a size 16, I definitely feel eyes on me of like, well, it's hard to get up the mountain when you're big, because
Exactly.
you're not
And
the
like,
right body type. And it's like,
and that's the hardest part. It's like, there is no right body type. And for so long, we've been told that there are runners' bodies and there are climber bodies and there are hiker bodies. Like,
yeah,
I can hike a mountain better now than I ever could at a smaller size, just because that's where my body's at. Like, I'm stronger. I don't smoke, which is a huge help. And just, I'm at a place in my life where these are things that I take seriously. So
yeah,
when I was like, significantly skinnier and struggling and huffing up that mountain, people were like, "Oh, she'll get there. It's fine." But now they're like, "Well,"
yeah,
and you feel like you really have to validate yourself. And it's almost a sense of like masochism for me. I'm like, I feel worthy by how hard I push myself. Like, I run 20 miles and I'm like, okay, now I feel like my body is worth something. But on the days that I like sit around, because everyone needs a rest day,
yes,
I'm like, oh, well, clearly you're lazy, and
yep,
obviously this is why your body is this way, which
yep,
is so, there's so many things on so many levels that are wrong with
yeah,
that I should unpack eventually, but I'm not going to do now. But I think that ties into it, this sense of worthiness. And I think you made an amazing point earlier, just with the outdoor community in general being kind of
yeah,
messy.
yeah. I feel like the outdoor community can be kind of level, level. I don't know, give you a badge for being the biggest masochist, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think some people really enjoy it. I have a mountaineering husband, and he is type 2 fun through and through. He is having a blast if he is suffering.
Yeah.
That's not me. And that's okay, right? That I am but like calling people like, a single pitch climber, you know, Sunday climber, Sunday dad climber, or whatever, is just really demeaning, because we're all out there and we're doing what serves us the best. And I think that's the hard thing about being in, you know, in nature in particular, is like, this is supposed to be a place where nothing is judging you and no one is judging you. So then to kind of bring that kind of attitude in there can be really destructive, and then can also really discourage people from joining in. You know, I had some people reach out to me to be like, I just like never thought I'd be welcome there, or like, I just thought I'd be suffering all the time. And I'm like, go on a mile-long hike. You are still an outdoors person. Like, you don't have to be climbing volcanoes here to be worthy of being outside. We're all worthy, and we're born that way. So I think that it's been, you know, it's also an interesting field, particularly the outdoors field, you know, kind of elevating, really, you know, tearing your hands on rocks and really struggling and like sleeping in the snow, which is all great if that's what serves you. But if not, like, that is completely valid too. And we need to carve out room for that and celebrate it, I think, just as much as we celebrate, you know, a free solo of El Capitan.
Yeah, which my son is like, got me very stressed. He's 5 and he's like, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, that's adorable. Absolutely. You're never.
Like, I hope you grow out of that.
I'm like, you let me know when your desire to climb El Cap without ropes is over, and we'll talk about it again then. But I think you're making such a good point, and I think it ties in like so seamlessly with body image and motherhood. They all kind of connect in the sense that there's always this weird conception of what we should be doing, what we should look like, how badass we should be. Like, you know, I was not a happy pregnant lady, and I was like not at a place where I wanted to climb and run and hike. And I did a little with my third, but you know, and then I'd see these women like shredding it up pregnant. I'm like, wow, like I'm failing. Like, what is it about me that is wrong? You know, or I think that it's just so important when we talk about diversity and inclusion to extend that farther than the things that we're used to thinking about. You know what I mean? Like, yes, now there's women in the outdoors and that's wonderful, but let's reevaluate and find a way to discuss what that really looks like and what that means. Because, you know, it doesn't mean just like being shredded and pregnant and tiny.
Totally.
And, you know, there's so many layers of what that means to be a woman outdoors.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, your point is well taken. I was awesome. Like, I was sick for the first 20 weeks, and I was like, pregnancy was not a super fun time for me. And it was, you know, but it was hard. And I think I heard a little of this too in your earlier point, was that then you sit down and you take a break, and then you blame yourself because you're like, well, you put yourself here because you didn't go out and do that thing. So then there's this self-shaming that also comes along with it. And like, I'm not saying that I don't do that. I think the whole point, particularly of my blog series, is to hopefully carve out a space for that in between, right? Like, I feel like there's quite a polarization of either like, I'm plus size and I'm so confident and I love my body and this is amazing, and like, I'm a bad bitch. And you probably are, to be honest. Or either like, I'm ashamed of myself and I'm going to lose all the weight I can, and here's my before and after pictures. There's this gray in between, which is where I live, and I think a lot of other people live too. Yeah, like, I think a lot of people live there too, that it's like, some days I wake up and I'm like, look at me, like, I went through 5 days of labor and I grew a human and I fed her from my breasts for a year. Like, this body is capable. And then, you know, an hour later, I'm like, that's the most disgusting picture I've ever seen. Megan, like, get to the gym now. You know, so, and it's like, and that's okay. And there's this middle ground, and I don't have the answers, and I don't think anybody really does, but I think we should still be talking about it, because I think there are more of us that are in this gray area than there are the black or the white, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's such an important thing to touch on, is feeling simultaneously powerful and also simultaneously feeling completely lost. And like, not like, there are moments where like I'll be running and I look down at my thighs and I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, these big old thighs are rad. Like, they are carrying me miles. And then like, I'll get up, like, there was like this picture after the Ragnar, and I showed it to my husband and I started crying, and I was like, this is how I looked the whole run.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, what are you talking about? You just ran. I was like, I wrote a post about this. I stole so much joy from myself in that moment. Instead of being like, fuck yeah, I did this thing. I was like, well, I looked disgusting. And it's such a toxic but it's hard to shake. And I, like we talked about earlier, like, I can't wait to see what maybe this dialogue looks like between like our daughters later. Like, what,
I know.
By reframing this, what that'll look like later. Like, instead of being like, you know, how do you balance feeling fat and pretty and strong and capable? It's like, all bodies are fucking awesome, you know? And like, the only reason maybe you want to lose weight is for you, not because like you're like, do I not fit into this cookie cutter of what I should look like to be outdoorsy.
And I think it's a good point, because I think there's a couple of things to unpack there. Is that one, that like, this is definitely a generational thing, right? So I think each generation, it's what we pass down. And I think we as mothers right now in this age are really challenged to start to change what we praise for, right? So like, rather than being praised for, oh, you look so pretty, you know, to my daughter, we try to praise her for like, wow, you finished that puzzle, you must be really proud of yourself. Or like, or if we're pointing out beauty, you know, if we see somebody, oh my gosh, look how beautiful her curly hair is, or like, look how beautiful that dark skin is, she looks like it's vibrant, you know. And instead of saying like, oh my gosh, this girl is so pretty, and only pointing out one type of person. I think that's a hard thing, but I think it's something that we train ourselves, because I know that I've been trained to hear like, this is the beauty standard, you're not meeting it, like you're not pretty, therefore you're not worthy, you're not getting praised for anything. So I think that's one area that we have to work on. And then there was another one that I forgot. So
well, if it makes you feel better, I like am so touched by that part, because I grew up in Los Angeles, where like I mentioned this earlier, like you could literally commit murder and it would be less of a crime than like not being thin and pretty. Like every sentence, every compliment I'd ever heard in my life was like, oh, you lost weight, you look amazing. Like it was almost one breath, you know what I mean? And it's so toxic and it's so scary. And the fact that like these things are starting to shift, it is a slow shift, don't get me wrong. And the fact that like it somehow has to be a movement feels very strange to me. Like it feels very counterintuitive that like loving your body is this radical notion, and like loving other people's bodies and being like, wow, she's beautiful regardless of this. And like, I guess I just did it there too. It shouldn't be regardless. It shouldn't be like, she's so pretty regardless of her size. Like it's just, it's so hard to untrain yourself and to like uncompress yourself of that understanding. And especially in the outdoors, because you see these bodies that are like literally at the pinnacle of like whatever it is, you know, like 0% body fat, and they're running bajillions of miles, and it's amazing. Don't get me wrong, but like my body is where I'm most capable now, and to have to struggle to celebrate those things is very strange to me.
Well, and I think it's also, there's this struggle of celebrating where you're at. I mean, I too have never felt simultaneously more powerful than going through birth and feeding and like nursing my daughter, and proud of my body, and like, this body is amazing and capable, while also feeling disgusting because I was the biggest I've ever been, right? So I think there's that strange paradox that we have at motherhood, but I think that there's also a really interesting kind of area that we're in right now, where it's a matter of polarization, right? You have to be one or the other. And my struggle really is that like we said earlier, kind of the middle ground, but also the middle ground of feeling like maybe I am a size 16 and I'm proud of my body, but I also want to change it, right? Like maybe, you know, there are some things that I am working towards. There are goals I'm working towards. Some weight loss is one of them. But I think that kind of puts you out of a certain group of saying like, you need to just accept what you are and not want to change it. And I'm not sure that I really subscribe to that. I definitely don't subscribe to like, you just need to lose weight to lose weight. But if I'm saying, you know what, it'd be really easier for me to carry my pack if I lost a little bit of weight around the middle or whatever, like, and you have healthy goals. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I think it's just an interesting paradox that is important for us to all explore, you know, in this moment.
And I think that that's one of the hardest parts, is finding dang it, that's a mosquito that bit me. Finding a sounding board so that it's not just this echo chamber of your thoughts and your things telling you that
Right.
somehow it's not that. Like, you know, so for me, I recently was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, man, I just feel gross and terrible. And she was like, but you're this and but you're that and but you're strong. And it was really interesting to me because I'd never really considered myself strong. And now this has become something that I kind of regurgitate to myself when I'm feeling really shitty. Like for me, motherhood was and is the most amazing experience. But I had a really hard time connecting the fact that I grew humans and nursed them with somehow my body being amazing. Like they were separate entities. Like growing my people and my body, like it felt so foreign when I was pregnant. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
I came crashing down to this world and still like I was just like, ugh, body, like here you are being horrible and flabby. And I had a really hard time connecting with those. So when I started viewing it through all these different lenses, it really helped me kind of move forward with that. Because, you know, everyone operates under a different MO and functions differently. And I think for me, it was so hard to hear like, well, you grew these healthy babies because my son was born with club feet too. And so I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, is my body wrong because he was born with this, you know, not defect. I mean, it was, but it's not now, you know, and like, I have all this hard time still unpacking what that all means to me on this journey.
I think that that's a lot. I totally get that. In fact, like when we first got pregnant, I miscarried, and I had a hard time, as a lot of women do, miscarrying. But I really, the first thing that went into my brain was, did I do this because I'm fat? Is this my fault because I'm fat? And it was hard for me to really get over that. And I'm not sure that anybody is ever really over it. But I also had to remind myself, like, my blood pressure is great. Like all the physical signs, like I don't have diabetes. I don't are there. And I think that that's also something that we have to, you know, consider is I'm definitely not saying that like I am in the best shape of my life, because I'm certainly not. I'm not even close. But I'm also saying that I'm in good enough shape to be able to enjoy the outdoors, to be able to climb 3,000 feet in a day and then come back down, you know, and to be able to, you know, whatever, do these amazing things that I feel like are still pretty damn great. Right. So like, I think, I think there's a lot of, obviously the misnomer that skinniness means fitness. I think that is definitely becoming more and more disproved, which I love. But then
because
I think
it feels really hard when someone who else is not in the best shape of their life is huffing and puffing up this mountain, and they're like, you know, significantly small, and they're like, oh well, you know, and there's every excuse where it's like somehow a big body is a bad body, like it doesn't serve you right, whereas like that's completely untrue. Like you can be, you know, tiny. Like my mother like has never weighed more than like 100 pounds soaking wet, and the woman can walk like more than half a mile before she falls apart. You know what I mean? Like it's all bodies can be good bodies. They have the opportunity and the ability, if nourished and given that chance.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, you know, again, like I don't think that I get very really frustrated when people start to talk about, you know, big bodies and like people's excuses and stuff. There's a lot of ways that people get to where they're at. You know, I haven't always been here. I was pretty sick several years ago. I had a lot of anxiety and depression, and then I got pregnant. So over those years, I gained 100 pounds, but that didn't change the inside of me, the Meghan that was an outdoors person, that loved that, so, you know, went out to nature to seek solace, to like clear my head. But in a lot of ways, it felt like I wasn't welcome anymore, you know, from even just things as like not being able to go into REI and get my sizes, which I can now. And I do really appreciate that. And I think,
thank
you, REI and Nike and athletics. And I think that like, that's a really great indicator that the market is shifting, and that culture and our mindsets will also shift. You know, if we have girls who grow up and they're size 16 and they're able to shop in the store along with their friends who are size 4, I think that really says a lot and reinforces us within society. But that's new. I mean, that was like this year, right?
Yeah.
So like,
and people were outraged by it. So
yeah, it was a really hard thing to feel like I'm this person, I'm this collegiate level athlete, I'm this like, you know, AT backpacker, and wait, I can't find a fucking harness that fits me. Like, you know, it's kind of a huge disassociation. And so I think that, you know,
Well, can
wherever
we
you
just
come
time out
from.
really quick that like that list of things is so badass. Like I just like I'm
Thank
like,
you.
well, sometimes I run, so like,
Well,
that
I
is
don't anymore,
so
so good
badass.
on you.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, oof. I'm clearly out of my league. You just outdoorsed me so
Yeah,
hard.
there is no outdoorsing anybody in this conversation.
Right. But I'm just like, those are the things that are amazing because like it makes me frustrated because, you know, for me,
Yeah,
no one assumes that I run, you know, or no one
yeah,
assumes that I do
yeah,
these things. So I'm like, I'm constantly like, I feel like I need to walk around with a banner being like, I do these things.
yeah.
And I'm sure
No,
it feels that way
totally,
for you too. Like you need to like
totally.
remind people of these things that you're capable of.
We were backpacking a couple weekends ago, and my husband had gone to collect some more firewood, and I was starting the fire, and somebody came up to me and was like, hey, do you know the best way? Do you need some help? Again, back to kind of like the really trying to
The
be
pattern, yeah.
helpful. And I'm like, I literally lived on the Appalachian Trail for a month. Like, yes, I can start a fucking fire. You know, like, thank you, but do you want to go ask that girl over there too? Just make sure she's
Yes.
good. Like,
Yeah,
you
like
know,
let's
so
make this equal here, man. Like
yeah, it's that equality of help and of encouragement and stuff that I would love to see more of. But at the same time, like, you can't fault people for being lovely and helpful and kind. And so, but again, it's that weird dichotomy. I feel like there's a lot of weird tensions and dichotomies when it comes to being plus size and being active that we come across that you just don't really expect to see. And I think you don't really think about when you're of a smaller size. But now I will never forget, no matter what size I ever end up being.
Exactly.
You know.
And then there's this weird, like, and I really want to touch on this too, is what you said about like the black and whites of that too, in terms of like you are either questing to perpetually lose weight or you're like, well, I'm good. And I feel like also there's this hard balance of I don't see my body represented anywhere. I see like plus size and I see tiny, and like I'm like we're close in size, and I feel like I'm not seeing that middle ground. Like it's somehow this gray area that's gotten completely lost in the shuffle, which is really hard. And I empathize with people, obviously not to the same degree, but when you don't see yourself represented, you're like, what is wrong with where I am? Like, am I not big enough? Am I not small enough? Like, where do I fit in all of this?
Yeah, and that's actually a blog post I have coming up is where, you know, when you don't fit in, when you feel like you don't fit in anywhere, right? You're kind of on the cusp. And this is not something that is unique to me. I mean, there have been particularly, you know, like take the huge Asian American population that I know has felt this for a long time, you know, or a lot of other minorities or diverse groups have definitely felt the kind of like, I am this, but not that, or where do I fit? But I think it's something that's coming up in the plus size realm a lot, because I'm like, yeah, cool, that girl's a 16, that model is a 16 like me, but she's also 6'1" and I'm 5'2". So like that still doesn't look the same.
Exactly. You know? And I don't want to diminish like any other minority or group feeling that left out, but it's, you know, because I hate to say it, but like I've been very privileged in so much as like for a long time I've been like, oh, I see me, and I'm very thankful for that. And I feel so frustrated for the people that don't, but for like a large portion of my adult life now, I'm like, where do I belong in this? Right. And it colors how you talk about the outdoors and how you perceive the outdoors and how you share your experiences in the outdoors, you know? Like my daughter is like the teeniest, tiniest human. Like I just like, it's ridiculous. And people are always like, oh, like she's so petite, where did she get that from? And I'm like, well,
like, did that just come out of your mouth?
Yeah, like, did no one think about this at all? And it shades how when I'm with her in the outdoors, I'm like, do people like, are they judging me? Do they think that like I'm not, you know, good enough? Am I, you know, making sure to support her in a way that like encourages her? Like, you know, she's so tiny that people are like, oh, she's too teeny for a harness. That's so cute. And I'm like, is this the flip side of that? Like, where do we find that ground that everyone feels like they belong?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, skinny bitches, we are not forgetting about you. Like, I think that there's, on the flip side, right, you can be tiny, but be so strong and people not appreciate that about you. And again, I think it comes back to like, just the judgment that's cast on women's bodies. Yeah. And of all bodies. And that is the number one thing that we start, that people start looking at. And I think that's something that's changing, right? That, we saw like on the red carpets, people are now asking men who they're wearing, not just women, and, stuff like that.
Yes.
But still, it's those subtle cues that reinforce that body is the number one thing that we should be proud of, and we should be, kind of sharing with the world our greatness. So I think it's, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say it, like, ultimately to me feels like a gross sense of objectification. Like, great that you climbed this mountain, but did you look cute doing it? Like, and it's, and it's really hard because with social media, it's another like insane dichotomy of, all these women who are teeny tiny on these mountains, and it's like, wow, it's amazing. And then, the other side where it's like adventure mamas who are like this radical notion that everyone is a badass. Like, every woman is entitled to feel like her best badass self.
Yeah.
And so I tune into Facebook sometimes or Instagram, and I'm like, wow, like, this really uplifted me. Oh, and then I feel sad. And then I feel amazing. And then I feel sad. It's this very strange roller coaster of emotion.
Yeah. I think that I have as many people, kind of have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, where I get to meet amazing people like you, my virtual bestie.
Best friend.
And like, but then also, I'm seeing these women, and it's, they're in these cute little 2 pieces, and they've just climbed this huge mountain. So I'm like, yeah, girl, like, you're badass. But then I'm also like, there is a huge misunderstanding of what I should be expecting, because I'm dirty and I'm gross when I get up there. And these girls, like, some of them, like, now I'm learning, I'm sure people knew this before, but like, they brought outfit changes, they like styled their hair, they have a professional photographer up there. And so it feels encouraging, but also very disingenuous. And this happens also too with like mommy bloggers, and like, there's obviously all of that. Like, I just can't even, I'm like, that's a whole nother topic, but
that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. But it's hard when it's not even the representation is not even just like magazines and newspapers and stuff. It's our own social networks that are reinforcing it. And I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying it's good. It's just, I think, and I guess that's kind of my whole platform, because I definitely don't have answers, but it's a matter of just saying, like, I don't know where this sits, but it's sitting with me, so it's probably sitting with somebody else, and like, let's just chat about it.
Well, that's like, and I'm sure I'm driving people insane about this, but like, it always comes back to this sounding board. This, am I crazy? Am I nuts? And people being like, no, like, I feel that too. Like, it's really hard when you're in your own echo chamber, kind of shouting into the void, like, and not getting any new answers. The more you yell, it's like the same things just kind of repeat. And like, for me, that was constantly like, you're not good enough. You can't do these things. Look at these people. And then you talk to someone else who's like, I feel that too. And I'm like, well, if you're a badass, but you feel that, like, where, like, how do I reframe my thoughts about this?
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of times that happens with weight a lot. I talk to even friends of mine who, again, it's the small things. They're like, oh man, I'm so fat, I need to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, if your size 4 ass is fat, like, then what do you think about me? So again, I think it's just a general awareness. It's something that I do see movement on in our culture, but we have a long way to go. And I think we have a long way to retrain our minds, and to hopefully, retrain our children's minds, or help mold them differently in a way that they can make that next step forward, and then their kids can make a step forward. And then, at some point we're all singing Kumbaya.
Right. That's my favorite. No, but isn't that like ultimately the point, is to have the next generation be better than you were at these things? Like, my mom, like I said, is like 100 pounds soaking wet, and has spent her whole life telling me she needs to lose weight. And I'm like, well, holy hell. Like, I've got some, like, serious, right? And then it's like, I stand in front of my daughter, and I'll have like these urges to say these things, and I'm like, no, like, shut it down. And it's so hard, but it's like, I don't want her to spend her life valuing all of these other amazing things and having it tie in, like, oh, you're so pretty, but you could do this. Or the flip side is, you're so pretty regardless of, and I'm like, there's so much more depth than all of that. And I think especially in the outdoors industry, I love seeing these women who just look like they could kick someone's ass. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you for being like what I wish I looked like, which is fine. Like, it's what you don't have to love your body to like the skin you're in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's another misconception. Like, I don't love my body, you know, but I'm learning to value it. And I think that's the difference. Is there's a real difference between loving it and being like, fuck yes, and then being like, no, I don't, and I wish it was different, but because it's not, I value it for what it can do for me and all the things that I'm able to do because of it, you know?
Yeah,
and so
absolutely. It's that able to be proud to be who you are and feel beautiful and feel confident in your skin while also wanting change, and that being an okay dichotomy to live under. And I totally agree with you. But I think that those are the radical moments of motherhood that you're doing by saying, I'm not going to say that shit in front of my daughter, you know? Like, and so it's those small things. And I think that's something we have to also remind people in the outdoor industry that, like, yeah, maybe somebody is scaling Mount Rainier, but the fact that you went on your first 1,000-meter hike for the first time ever is amazing, you know? So like, I think that those kind of cheering on and conversations also need to happen. And I think they are. But I think that's also part of the role that hopefully we're playing. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are more in our group than maybe the voices have shown so far.
Right. Amen to that. Cause like, I think a lot about some of these companies that I like really look up to, that I like genuinely love as brands. And I think to myself how often I don't see myself in them. I'm like, but what would happen in like this radical world where if like not only did they feature these ultra athletes, but they featured these everyday humans. Like, I look at Solomon and I see like Killian Jornet or whatever, and I'm like, holy hell, this man is bonkers, you know? And I'm like, cool, like, I wish, you know, but at the same time, what if I saw someone who looked like me trudging along, you know? And so recently Solomon partnered with Women Who Explore for the Ragnar. And it felt so cool to be like, this company believes in that motto of every person can do these things. It's not that you have to be shredded or you have to be the fastest or you have to be amazing. And so like, now I'm like, well, now I love Solomon for life. Like, that's it. Because you had faith in me. And that it's just like Adventure Mamas. I'm like, you had faith in me to do this thing that I don't even really know what I'm doing ever in my entire life, but thank you for like pretending I do.
Totally. Yeah, and I think we're seeing that in communities like Fat Girls Hiking and Unlikely Hikers and Melanin Base Camp. And, you know, those are areas too that we all have to throw our weight behind, and you know, no pun intended.
I just like it
though. You know, because that is really what's making the change. And I think that, you know, like I said before, I think that there are companies coming around. I think there are a lot that are not, you know, and the only way it gets changed is to have the dialogue and to also say, hey, look, I'm out here and I'm doing this and I need you to support me too. So,
I think it's amazing. And I just really, appreciate you doing this again with me. And I just appreciate the insight and, you know, the genuine thoughtfulness behind it, because I think this is such a hard topic. And I think it's one that's so hard to nail down, because I think so often people expect answers. They're like, well, if you don't like this, what do you want? Or if you don't feel about your body, what should you feel? And I think the stress that you put on that there are no answers and that it is a dichotomy is so important to let people know that you don't have to seek answers all the time. It's not so solid. It's so malleable in how you approach these things. The only solid answer that I would have for people is to genuinely think about their role in perpetuating these things.
I think being sensitive and supportive is a really hard balance to strike, but it's something that is super important. And I think also, recognizing that like nobody is one thing at all points in time. Nobody is 100% confident at all points in their life. And that you don't have to be like, I am this size, I'm so confident, and like And so I don't need to change anything, or like I hate myself, I need to change everything. It's okay to be in the middle. And I think there's some really amazing women. I have another blog post coming up this week that features several really amazing everyday women that are plus size, that are ultra marathoners and climbers. And so, yeah, if anybody's feeling a little down, go get some inspo.
Right.
Because, but thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so stoked that we like got to chat face to face, kind of. And also just that like, you know, I had this opportunity through Adventure Mamas to connect with the radical badasses like yourself. And I'm just so stoked, and I'm so grateful that we had this conversation. And to everyone watching, Meghan is amazing, and follow her at The Wandering PHULS.
Fuels.
I'm not going to try to say your last. Thank you. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I give up. It's hard.
It's okay. It is hard.
And check out all of her blogs. They're going to be on the Adventure Mamas website.
Yeah,
and
they're linked right now on my profile too.
Perfect. And I will include the link at the bottom of the IGTV post, and you can find this video here on IGTV or on YouTube. I just decided to finally like get my kids together and do that. And if you ever want to be on the show, shoot me a message. And again, you're amazing. I'm so glad you're my internet bestie. Thank you.
Yes. Yay. Awesome. Right. Well, thanks again.